watching WAFB's streaming newscast, live and local, with Dion Guillory. This is 9 News at 5:30.
Developing now as we start streaming at 5:30, Louisiana's top attorney taking her fight against abortion drugs to Capitol Hill. Attorney General Liz Murrill testifying in front of a Senate committee chaired by Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. Louisiana is one of several states pushing Congress to take action against laws protecting doctors who mail abortion pills to states where they are banned. Louisiana is one of them. We're seeing those actions playing out recently with the criminal indictment of California doctor Remy Coteau. He's accused of sending the abortion medication mifepristone to a woman in St. Tammany Parish, a drug listed on the state-controlled substances list. In her testimony, Murrill highlighted what she called Biden-era initiatives that ensure drugs like mifepristone are widely accessible through telehealth, and said they were, quote, ignoring federal law.
Senator Sanders, I would also continue to say that it is illegal, it is unethical, and it is immoral for anyone to send pills to someone with no medical supervision and then tell them to lie at the hospital.
Yeah, but that happens because of the laws of your state.
No, it happens because people from outside our state are sending them into our state to nullify our state laws. That's why it happens.
How do we stop this from happening?
We prosecute those people.
Well,
Murrill is now calling for an end to sending drugs via the mail and believes putting the in-person dispensing requirement back in place would protect women in the state. She's also calling for the state of California to send Dr. Coteau here to Louisiana to face the charges against him. Now, that's not going to happen most likely, because we reached out to the office of California Governor Gavin Newsom, who says they have yet to receive an official extradition request from Louisiana. He also released a statement saying California protects patients and their doctors and will not be complicit to these actions by the state of Louisiana. President Donald Trump issuing another strong warning to Iran as the regime has threatened capital punishment for people arrested during anti-government protests. The demonstrations angering the country for the last 3 weeks. Natalie Brand from the White House tonight.
President Trump, in an exclusive interview with CBS News, vowed to take strong action against Iran if anti-government protesters are hanged.
We're hearing that they're going to start hanging protesters tomorrow. So it comes back to the question, have they crossed your red line, or has the line moved?
I haven't heard about the hanging. If they hang them, you're going to see some things that I don't know what where you come from and what your thought process is, but you'll perhaps be very happy.
What do you mean by that?
We will take very strong action. If they do such a thing, we will take very strong action.
It comes as prosecutors in Iran say they are bringing capital charges against people arrested during anti-government demonstrations, with Iran's Supreme Court Chief Justice calling for expedited trials and punishments.
We have documented over 16,700 arrests. These are people that are being arbitrarily detained in sometimes unknown detention facilities. And they're also being subject to forced confessions.
In addition to the arrests, sources tell CBS News that the number of protesters killed is now at least 12,000, possibly upwards of 20,000.
Nobody's been able to give us accurate numbers about how many people they've killed.
Well, on that
but
point,
it looks
Mr.
like
President,
it could be a pretty substantial number, and that's going to be a lot of problems for them.
As the president weighs potential military options with his national security team, he told reporters he thinks it's a good idea for Americans to evacuate Iran.
CBS News has confirmed reports the U.S. has begun a precautionary reduction of some personnel from nearby U.S. bases, including Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Iran launched missiles at the airbase last June in response to the U.S. strikes on key nuclear sites. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
The U.S. is suspending immigrant visa processing from 75 countries for an indefinite amount of time. The affected nations include Brazil, Colombia, Egypt, Haiti, Somalia, and Russia. An important distinction here is the suspension only applies to immigrant visas like those required to work in the U.S. The visas students and tourists use to enter the country are considered non-immigrant. So people from the impacted countries will still be allowed to visit the U.S. and attend school here. The next suspension starts next Wednesday. Some of the countries are already on the Trump administration's expanded travel ban list. New developments tonight in Mississippi. A teen who confessed to a synagogue fire was indicted on a state charge with hate crimes enhancement. 19-year-old Stephen Pittman is facing a charge of first-degree arson of a place of worship with a hate crime enhancement. He's scheduled to return to court next Tuesday. The county DA's office says it appears the fire was, quote, alleged to have been motivated by religious hatred. Pittman could face up to 6 decades in prison on state charges if convicted. A Jennings man is behind bars tonight after police say he provided fentanyl to a pregnant woman who lost her nearly full-term baby after an overdose. Daniel James Smith faces a second-degree feticide charge in connection with the death of Chandelyn Benoit's unborn child. Police say Benoit used fentanyl and heroin for stomach pain throughout her pregnancy, despite repeated warnings about the risks to her baby. She was hospitalized for an overdose in December. The child later died. It's been a busy week for the U.S. Supreme Court. Justices ruling tonight that an Illinois congressman may sue over mail-in ballots. President Donald Trump continues to push for their elimination, alleging that somehow this undermines the security of elections. Washington correspondent Brendan Cullerton has more on that ruling.
The Supreme Court rules Congressman Mike Bost has the right to sue Illinois over mail-in ballots because he's a political candidate and has a personal stake in the rules governing the election. Representative Bost sued the state for counting ballots after Election Day, provided they were postmarked before polls closed. The state ruled Bost did not have standing or the right to sue because he won his election by so many votes, the law had no effect on him anyways. The ruling does not mean Bost wins his case. It simply means he is allowed to bring the case in the first place. President Donald Trump has promised repeatedly to lead a movement to end mail-in ballots. However, the Constitution dictates states get to decide how they run elections. This is not the end for lawsuits on mail-in ballots. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case from Mississippi on whether those ballots can be counted after Election Day. From the Supreme Court, I'm Brendan Cullerton.
Brendan, thank you. Supreme Court news continuing here with this one. Law enforcement can enter a private residence if they believe there's an emergency. But how sure do they have to be? The Supreme Court answering the question at the crux of that case. Washington correspondent Ryan Henson explains the judge's ruling.
So the justices rule that law enforcement can enter your home without a warrant in a potential emergency situation as long as they have an objectively reasonable basis. That's a higher standard than probable cause, which is what Case and supporters were arguing. In this incident, William Case's girlfriend called the police on him, saying he had a gun with intent to harm himself. Officers arrested Case and charged him with assaulting an officer. The state of Montana argued that ruling in Case's favor would have been too restrictive for officers in a life or death situation. Case's supporters argued that anything short of probable cause infringes upon citizens' rights. Ultimately, the justices argued probable cause is for investigations, while the emergency aid exception allows law enforcement to act as community caretakers. At the Supreme Court, I'm Brian Henson.
At the White House, President Trump put his signature on a law that makes milk at the nation's schools whole again. With a bottle of milk on his Oval Office desk, you see it right there, the president signing into law the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act. Congress passed the legislation late last year. It lets schools participating in the National School Lunch Program offer whole milk or 2% milk to students.
Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whole milk is right? That's a great thing.
The new law reverses Obama-era restrictions that limited options to low-fat or fat-free milk, which was aimed at fighting childhood obesity. In a statement, the head of the International Dairy Foods Association praised the new law, saying it gives schools flexibility. A high-stakes meeting is taking place over the future of Greenland. U.S. officials are sitting down with leaders from that Danish territory. It comes as the president dials up the pressure to get control of the island. Washington correspondent Stephen Goen has those details.
President Donald Trump is escalating his push for U.S. control of Greenland, calling anything short of that unacceptable. On social media, the president's saying that officials within the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, should, quote, be leading the way for us to get it, adding that he believes if we don't, Russia or China will. But leaders in Greenland and Denmark continue to push back. This week, Greenland's prime minister is saying, if we have to choose between the United States and Denmark, here and now, we choose Denmark. Trump responding.
I don't know who he is, don't know anything about him. but that's going to be a big problem for him.
The president framing Russia and China as a critical threat in the region. On social media, Trump saying, NATO, tell Denmark to get them out of here now. 2 dog sleds won't do it. Only the USA can. Those comments in response to a Danish intelligence report that warns China is preparing to have a military presence in the Arctic, with China and Russia reportedly deepening cooperation in the area. And in response to Trump, we're learning Denmark is now deploying military equipment and troops to Greenland. That's according to Danish media reports. In Washington, I'm Stephen Goen.
Stephen, thank you. Breaking tonight, a construction crane falling on a train, killing at least 12 people. That crane, which was being used to build an elevated high-speed railway, fell onto the moving train as it was traveling from Bangkok. That train derailed and caught on fire. The department said in a Facebook post that the fire was under control and that rescuers were searching for people trapped inside this train. Thailand officials say at least 12 people were killed and that there were 195 people on board the train. They say they have ordered an investigation into this accident. A terrifying moment was caught on camera in Florida. John Brittingham was driving down Florida's A1A, the iconic coastal highway, when he saw 2 toddlers wandering alone in the middle of the road. Take a look at this dash cam video. The driver pulled over, got out, and then picked up the girls and carried them to safety. That video will eventually be shown here. Now, the driver says it was a terrifying 6 seconds. He then safely reunited with the girls and their family. You can see him running right here to pick them up and get them out of harm's way. Well, the planet hit its 3rd hottest year on record in 2025, extending a run of unprecedented heat. Climate researchers are out with a new report about the world's warming temperatures and what it could mean for the years ahead. Tina Kraus with that story.
When it comes to global temperatures, the thermometer just keeps climbing. And climate scientists say record-breaking heat is the new normal.
2025 was the 3rd warmest year on record after 2024 and 2023. We've seen exceptional heat both in air, land and ocean temperatures.
The European Climate Service, Copernicus, has released new data showing warming temperatures are pushing the planet closer to breaking international climate targets. Experts say last year was far hotter than even a decade ago, despite natural cooling from La Nina, and insists the overwhelming culprit is clear: the burning of coal, oil, and natural gas.
Our atmosphere acts like a thermal blanket. When we add additional aerosols, such as carbon dioxide and methane, that acts to thicken that blanket, which then increases the insulation and our planet gets warmer.
And researchers say that trapped heat is driving extreme weather, and at least in part, fueled the intensity of last year's Los Angeles fires and the destructive force of Hurricane Melissa.
We do know that the best tool available is to reduce the emissions, and the sooner we reduce the emission, the more we can mitigate the risk.
Giving the planet a fighting chance to beat the heat. Tina Kraus, CBS News, London.
New details tonight show more Americans are surviving cancer. According to the American Cancer Society's new annual report, 70% of Americans with cancer are alive at least 5 years after their initial diagnosis. Now that's a milestone because that's up 50% from the 1970s. ACS says cancer deaths are declining in the U.S. largely because of fewer people smoking, earlier detection of cancers, and improved treatments. More than 2.1 million people in the U.S. are predicted to be diagnosed with cancer this year. About 800,000 fewer people signed up for Affordable Care Act coverage through early January. That's compared to the same period last year. The federal government reports 22.8 million people signed up through January 3rd, compared to 23.6 million through the same period a year ago. The decline comes as the expiration of enhanced premium subsidies in December pushes up premiums. The federal government had offered the enhanced subsidies since 2021. On average, the expiration has doubled the price of premiums. People can still enroll in plans through Thursday. If you borrowed money from the Department of Education to pay for college and are behind on those student loan payments, the Trump administration is cracking down. The Department of Education sending out notices that could impact more than 5 million federal student loan borrowers who are in default. The Department of Education notifying those in student loan default that their wages will be garnished, which means the government can take up to 15% of your paycheck directly without going to court. So if you are in default, You're asked to contact your loan servicer immediately. Now you have a few options: loan rehabilitation, making 9 affordable payments over 10 months, loan consolidation into a new direct loan, or switching to an income repayment plan that fits your budget.